I'm a Republican, a Christian, and as anti-woke as you can get. I watched the debate about transgender people and attempts to ban gender-affirming care, and to be candid, I'm appalled. The people wanting to ban gender-affirming care have no idea what it is like to be transgender or to have a transgender child. This is not something that's done on a whim. It's a deep-rooted dysphoria that, yes, even has spiritual elements to it. My son has a masculine soul. For years, he tried to be a young woman, and it didn't ease the ache and sadness in his soul. And it was only until he was able to transition to be a young man that the light in his eyes returned. I got involved because I was watching this being portrayed as some kind of left-wing thing, that there were left-wing parents forcing their children to become transgender, and that's not the case.
To the young people that are out there that are suffering, you are loved even if you have to have a surrogate dad like him. There are people out there who support you and love you, and your life is worth living.
That's Republican Ricky Colby and his son, that he's calling his son, trans son there, and he's realized something. Yo, my son is a human being and he's always been who he is. And how dare I tell him who he is, as he's now happier when he saw this darkness over him and he didn't feel like he was really himself. Odd how that works, but he figured it out. Maybe because it was just personal. I always say that people will never understand anything about anyone else unless they experience it themselves. So some people are like that because they can't put themselves in other folks' shoes. He's an Ohio state rep, and from the floor there in Ohio, he also gave a speech against these other lawmakers on his side of the aisle that are looking to reintroduce this ban on gender-affirming care for minors. This is what he had to say. He had more.
I see it breaking into this left-right thing, and it's really not. There are Republicans, there are Christians who have transgender children. The people wanting to ban gender-affirming care have no idea what it is like to be transgender or to have a transgender child. This is not something that's done on a whim. It's a deep-rooted dysphoria that, yes, even has spiritual elements to it. My son has a masculine soul, and he said he's felt this way since he was 5. He tried so hard to overcompensate and try to fit into being a feminine young woman by participating in beauty pageants. For years, he tried to be a young woman, and it didn't ease the ache and sadness in his soul. And it was only until he was able to transition to be a young man that the light in his eyes returned. You've got to go easy on this. This is a terrible bill. This is not the simple issue being portrayed by the anti-trans people.
You can go ahead and admit you were one of those anti-trans people. It's okay to have an enlightenment and point out why, which I think he's done. But at least in that particular part of the speech, yes, you're one of them. Maybe they can figure where it's coming from more. Jess, your thoughts on this? Because again, they see it then, but they won't see it before. So until I guess they all decide to accept their children, because I'm sure they have gay children or trans children, but it's not a problem.
Yeah, I hate this narrative that comes up time and again, especially when you have a Republican Party that's really taken to racism, anti-LGBTQ sentiments, all of it. I was in this small town in Iowa, Mount Ayr, and there was a young girl who knew that she was trans from a very young age, and she started transitioning very early. And the whole town really supported her. And this is a town of very conservative, mostly Trump supporting people. And they really embraced her and loved her for who she was. And something I heard a lot was, well, you can't even tell. She looks like she's always been a woman. They would say things like this. And it's almost like we're getting that narrative, oh, well, this is one of the good ones because this one doesn't look weird. That typical narrative of like, oh, well, you're one of the good ones because you don't act like that. You don't act like the other people that are in your racial or gender or whatever category that we don't particularly like. He's gay, but he doesn't act gay. He doesn't throw it in your face. It's that idea of like, there are some people who fit their traditional way of life while still having this element about them. They want it to just be invisible, I think, is a big part of it. But it's antisocial to deny someone their identity. They should be allowed to be who they are in public. And so I really think stories like this are useful in breaking that down. And the way he talks about the spiritual side of things, I think is probably useful for a lot of people to really get it.
And that's what's actually so sad, because again, like you said, there's folks who go, oh, well, look at these 3 trans men. Would you want them in the women's restroom because they have goatees and have a lumberjack shirt on? It's odd how a lot of times that's the thought process of what a real trans man is supposed to look like. But then the discussions come up about gender-affirming care. And that's sometimes is part of the process in doing so, to look and fit the bill so the rest of society can accept folks. And sadly, that's also part of what they're blocking, because we already don't accept folks unless we see it visually, like you don't make me uncomfortable anymore, so therefore I can accept you for who you are. How effed up is that? Just think about it as we go into this one, because plenty of libs and Democratic voters who think that way and don't realize how damaging that also can be. Who cares how uncomfortable you are? How uncomfortable do you make someone else in their life, rather than that 30 seconds when you pass them on the streets?